If there's three things we as a human race collectively love, it's the 90s, it's Las Vegas, and it's professional flipping wrestling. My name is Jack the Jobber, welcome back to the channel, and it's time for another thrilling installment of Very Weird Wrestling. And this time, because it's WrestleMania season, baby, we're looking at WrestleMania 9. Held outside of Caesar's Palace in the early stages of a historic slump for the WWF and featuring one of the worst booking decisions in company history, this is commonly remembered as one of the very worst WrestleManias ever. But also, happily for us, it's also perhaps one of the most totally radical pay-per-views of all time, so let's waste no further. Let's go. A big thank you as always to the wonderful people over at my Patreon. They voted for this one, so thank you. In the early 90s, WWF's golden age was only really just ending, but it must have seemed a million miles away. Things were bad. With the company mired in various dark scandals, most famously the steroid scandal, which saw Vince McMahon under investigation for several years and eventually indicted at the end of '93, everything was looking quite bleak. With business trending downwards and huge bodybuilder physiques looking a little bit suspicious, Vince McMahon tried to really shake things up. He tried to shift the focus to a new generation of talent, including Bret the Hitman Hart and Yokozuna, the two men set to main event this very pay-per-view, as it happens. And speaking of this WrestleMania, what do you do when spirits are low? You throw a costume party, of course. That is guaranteed to raise morale. And WrestleMania IX isn't just the first ever outdoor WrestleMania in company history. More than any other WrestleMania we've seen before or since, I think that WrestleMania IX most fully embraces a particular theme. Ooh, you thought WrestleMania 37 was cool because Hogan and Titus wore pirate hats. Look at WrestleMania IX. Look at the announce team. Look at Howard Finkel. I don't need to fully spell it out for you, you know, Caesar's Palace is where it's taking place, Julius Caesar, the Roman-themed WrestleMania. That's probably about as much thought as they put into it as well. And WWF even marketed the event as the world's largest toga party. So large, so many togas. They drew under 17,000 fans, a fraction of the previous year's WrestleMania attendance. But I guess that's what happens when you decide to hold WrestleMania in a glorified car park instead of a big arena or a stadium. Now, there are plenty of names that we'll see on this card that would indeed go on to spearhead this new generation. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, The Undertaker, and so on. There are still a few old-timers as well, hanging on, stars of the golden generation, really trying to cling on to their main event spots. Most notably, of course, Hulk Hogan. But he's not in the main event. He's tucked away in a tag team match on the undercard. Bit weird? Yeah, it's quite strange to see Hulk Hogan willingly take such a back seat, isn't it? I mean, it's nice of him, I suppose, yeah. Hold that thought. Now let's crack on with the show! It's April 4th, 1993. The WWF are trying to breathe new life into their scandal-ridden product, and we're going to see if they can do it, or if they're going to bring about a slump from which it would take years and years to recover. I wonder which one it's going to be. Gorilla Monsoon welcomes us to the show, and you know, the Roman theme, I don't know if it's aged too well. It looks pretty tacky through modern eyes, but I think it's got a certain rubbish charm. I mean, you have to commend the promotion, I suppose, for really going all in on the theme. I mean, look at these two lads, for example. Who are they? Get them in the ring. Clashy, clashy, clash. Are you not entertained? And so on and so forth. Gorilla throws to Jim Ross, who's actually making his on-screen debut for the WWF, and he's very excited to show off his sandals, or as he calls them, these gold shoes. It's a good start. It's a good start to this event. You know how these days at WrestleMania, the first theme music we're probably going to hear is usually Triple H's theme music? This WrestleMania says, hold my wine, because the first entrance we see is none other than the main man himself, Julius Caesar. He is accompanied by Queen Cleopatra, and he is riding literally an elephant. Oh, you damn kids, you damn millennials, you Gen Zers, thinking you've got it tough, risking life and limb in front of a rampaging Steve Austin on a quad bike? Back in my day, we could have been genuinely trampled by nature's saddest battle tank. The elephant gently lets Caesar down and then goes into business for itself, standing on its hind legs and spawning rumours which persist to this day that The Undertaker tried to kick the elephant out of the locker room for stealing everybody else's heat. It's worth mentioning, by the way, that Jim Ross is calling this this like it's all entirely real. I know it's wrestling, I know he always pretends it's real, but in terms of the Roman stuff, he's like, Julius Caesar and Queen Cleopatra now, making their way around the real. As if, is he expecting us to believe that they've come from 50 BC to early 90s Las Vegas? But let's just keep that between you and me, because if you go on Twitter right now and try and claim that it's not the real Julius Caesar, you'll be bombarded with different accounts saying like, why can't we keep the magic alive? Why do we have to be so obsessed with not getting worked all the time? All right, Buddy Ray. The Macho Man Randy Savage arrives in quite luxurious fashion, being fed grapes, and he joins Jim Ross on commentary, and he's just being Randy Savage, which 99% of the time is more than enough. A couple of great early quotes from Savage here, actually. We've got a lock and load type situation, whatever that means. And my favourite, WrestleMania IX, have a good time. Then, in honestly, like an all-time great comedy bit in WWE history, Bobby Heenan completes the commentary trio by riding out backwards in a state of panic on a camel. And I'm not being sarcastic there, it's genuinely fantastic. In fact, it's so good that in these early stages, I'm starting to think, hang on, have we all collectively got this wrong? Is WrestleMania IX actually amazing? The Bobby Heenan entrance might be the best thing on the show. And because he's such a goddamn professional, Bobby Heenan, by the way, of course he makes a mess of getting down off the camel and ends up in this position. And quite honestly, you can do all the 450 sentons and corkscrew planches that you want. This is real pro wrestling. That's probably got Bully Ray off my back now. Yes. And now, ladies and gents, mainly gents, I've looked at my stats page, 95% of you are male, and frankly, I'm shocked that it isn't even more. It's time for the opening match of the evening, or the daytime, or the day evening. We're in the desert, and it's bright. This cocky little rascal is defending his IC championship against Tatanka, who just refuses to stay still and let me get a good screenshot of his entrance. It's very selfish. The champ is, of course, Shawn Michaels. We all know Shawn Michaels, and at this stage of his career, he had just turned heel not that long ago, really, famously betraying tag team partner Marty Jannetty, although Jannetty was fired a little bit later on, but before this show, meaning that a potential WrestleMania clash was never able to happen. Now, Jannetty would later be rehired, but that doesn't change the fact that Shawn needs a new opponent right now for WrestleMania IX, hence the involvement of Tatanka, who had already beaten Shawn Michaels twice in the build-up to the show. There are also managers involved, with Shawn's former manager, the sensational Sherry, turning face and siding with Tatanka, and Shawn instead acquiring the services of heel manager Luna Vachon, making her on-screen debut here apparently. Luna and Shawn, I've got to be honest, they're a bit of a weird couple. Their gimmicks don't really mesh with each other that well, but maybe she'll help him get the win here. We'll have to find out. Why am I pretending like I don't know the result? We get a lot of headlocks and grappling and that sort of stuff to start out, but then Tatanka hits a lovely delayed back suplex, and shortly afterwards reverses a top rope maneuver into a lovely mid-air arm drag. I'm like, hang on, is Tatanka actually Bret Hart? I mean, maybe the main event should probably be Tatanka versus Yokozuna. Am I right, guys? Guys, am I right, guys? Tatanka versus guys? Now, of course, HBK hates to be upstaged in terms of work rate, so he gets his own back by selling a chop on the apron with a 360 mid-air spin to the outside while the two managers stare at each other menacingly. Tatanka no-sells a clothesline from Shawn. He's been made to look very dominant here, it must be said. And then Michaels does, I think, perhaps the single most impressive running into the ring post spot that I've maybe ever seen. You know how most people kind of slow down a bit at the moment of impact and just kind of end up hugging the ring post because they're sane? Well, HBK instead just runs fully into it at top speed, and you actually hear the impact as well. Tatanka hits a big shoulder breaker, and on commentary, Macho Man's like, make the cover, but Tatanka does not take his advice. Instead, he heads up top and comes up with a flying chop to the head, and then he does another one, but it's countered with sweet chin music. Well, sweet pelvis music, if we're being generous. This is a bit of a turning point in the match, as Shawn then gets a very near fall off a victory roll, but the silly Sausage tries the same trick twice, and the second victory roll attempt is countered when Tatanka just falls backwards, sending HBK flying. Michaels briefly takes control again, but it's time for Tatanka to start Tatanka-ing up, which involves a lot of kind of trotting, a little bit of trotting, a bit like a horse in a dressage event. The trot gets faster and more furious, Tokyo Drift, and suddenly he's hitting chops on Shawn, and Shawn sells one by doing like a mid-air 360 spin again, and Tatanka's just running wild. And Tatanka's picking up near falls, and he counters a crossbody into a huge mid-air slam, and I'm just like, I don't know if I was in a good mood when I was watching this. I'm like, Tatanka's the greatest wrestler alive. The champion has to take things to the outside in desperation, but he misses a splash and crashes into the ring steps, and Tatanka scoots back inside, and suddenly the referee counts at 7, so Shawn just pulls the ref out the ring. I mean, first of all, the title wouldn't have even changed hands on a count out, so you're probably fine, but also, the ref's count was only at 7. You could have easily, you had 3 seconds to get back in the ring, which in referee terms is like 20 seconds? But anyway, the pair keep fighting, Tatanka hits his finisher and makes the cover, and the referee's just like, nope. Yeah, it turns out the match is already over. I assume from a DQ for, Shawn pulling the referee out of the ring, and that's what Heenan suggests on commentary as well. But then they announce it as a count-out victory for Tatanka instead, which I don't think makes any sense. That's literally not what happened. In fact, can we all start a campaign right now to turn Tatanka's victory at WrestleMania IX over Shawn Michaels from a count-out into a DQ victory instead, please? I think justice needs to be done. Regardless, the belt doesn't change hands, which is fine, but nobody seems to know the rules. Sherry's delighted, and then Luna's really sad for her boy, and I'm like, why are none of you, what are you doing? It's not quite as bad, I guess, as Lex Luger's infamous celebration of not winning the title at SummerSlam later on in the year, because at least Tatanka didn't bring any balloons. Was it balloons? Was it confetti? Was it both? I'll flash it up on screen now, and we'll find out together. Shawn leaves with the belt, and just when I start to relax and I think the action's over and I reach for yet another handful of M&Ms to just shovel into my mouth, Luna absolutely blasts Sherry with a clothesline, and I'm like, come on, I just want to be allowed to gorge myself on M&Ms without having to pay attention. Leave me be! Bit too much of a window into my creative process there. M&M's are good, man. M&M's are good. Better than Skittles. Skittles make me thirsty. Anyway, Luna looks really strong here. Big body slam to Sherry, and then when Tatanka runs along to make the save, she's just gone. She's like the fastest woman alive. She's just an angry blonde speck on the horizon. Now, of course, it would not be an old WWF pay-per-view without Mean Gene Okerlund, and there he is. He's backstage, he's dressed the part, and in my opinion, he looks adorable. Gene welcomes along one of the most promising tag teams he's ever seen, he says, and it's the Steiner brothers. There they are, Scott and Rick, the Steiners. Scott on the right, looking like a different human to what he would later become, and Rick, who I honestly don't think could have changed less in the time since this pay-per-view. Never in human history has there been a more Rick Steiner man than Rick Steiner. I find this really hilarious because Scott's delivery is the same as it'll be later on in his career, but he's not Big Papa Pump yet. He's not the big bad booty daddy. So he's just kind of saying generic babyface stuff, but in a really angry Scott Steiner way. He's like, this is our first WrestleMania, we're going to try our best, we're going to try really hard. Rick's promo is pretty similar as well in terms of content, except he keeps turning his back on the camera. Oh, he doesn't know where the camera is, the little scamp. Their match is next, and it is a tag team contest against the Head Shrinkers, and once again I am left very frustrated by the lack of a cohesive, screenshotable pose from the lads. But basically it's the team of Samu and Fatu, aka Rikishi, and they are managed by Samu's dad, Afa, of the Wild Samoans. And yeah, it's not the most modern or subtle gimmick, and really not one that's aged tremendously well, it has to be said. There's absolutely no, Roman Reigns, icy mafia don stuff going on here, no. They've got bamboo sticks and they're wild, and that's kind of it. Anyway, it should still be a good match, and the Steiners come out, and I am immediately confounded by this very specific sign in the crowd. New York City loves the Steiner brothers and the Undertaker. First of all, why is the word under in quotation marks? And also, I just find it so weird that none of these things are connected. Taker's from Texas, the Steiners are from Michigan, the show's in Las Vegas, and the people holding the sign are from New York City. It's like a sign these days saying something like, San Francisco loves the Motor City Machine Guns and Obafemi. At least it's nice, At least it's a show of goodwill. Thank you very much. Thank you, people from New York City. Fatu begins the match as the legal man, finally giving us a decent screenshot of his face. And yeah, that is unmistakably a young Rikishi. So young, in fact, that I think we can definitely tell that he's the Usos' dad at this point. Like the first match, there's a bit of grappling to start, but then Scott makes the quite clever tactical adjustment of just repeatedly punching his opponent in the face. Nice little moment here as Rikishi busts out the Rikishi bump. Yeah! and then the heels take control with heelish tactics. But Samu and Fatu do not press their advantage, instead having a team talk with Afa, giving the Steiners the chance to recover and scale the same corner at the same time. And I'm like, oh my god, what kind of young Bucksian gymnastics are we going to see here? And then they go, hup. Hey man, if it works, it works. Afa tries to fire his team up by banging their heads together, but that doesn't turn the tide. What does turn the tide is the single most terrifying flapjack spot I have ever seen. Look at the state of that. I don't even think this is a botch, because you can see Fatu pulling the top rope down so that Scott flies clean to the outside. So I'm forced to assume that before the show backstage, Scott Steiner was like, yeah lads, just throw me head first over the top rope to the outside of the ring. That sounds absolutely fine. And then the punishment to Scott Steiner continues, because before he's even had a chance to recover, Afa just cracks him in the back with his stick. I think if they just left Scott on the outside, they would win by countout at this stage. But no, instead the heels get him back in the ring and they work over the bubbling human puddle that was once Scott Steiner for a while. Finally though, he manages to evade a big splash from Samu, who gets huge air by the way, SSX Tricky in the house, and he makes the hot tag to Rick, who runs wild. David Arquette voiced one of the characters in SSX Tricky, did you know that? He voiced this one. That's right. Again though, the heels take control, hitting Rick Steiner with kind of a double version of Jeff Jarrett's finisher, the Stroke, which I believe means that they have now charged the venue with the power of 10,000 screwy finishes, which maybe explains what we see later on. They go for their double team finisher, but Rick busts out a crazy reversal. It's genuinely really fantastic. And I'm like, ugh, I hate when good things happen. Not on my WrestleMania IX. And really, this should have been the finish to the match, but it's not. Instead, Scott tags back in and goes for a Frankensteiner to his running opponent, and it just goes wrong. Look, I'll show you. All good so far? Oh dear. And that's the finish. And the Steiners get the win. So Rick and Scott are victorious and they head to the back, all good stuff. What the hell is that? It is, of course, the mischievous work of Doink the Clown, and Mean Gene scolds him for desecrating the visage of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar died in 44 BC. Too soon, Mean Gene? Doink's opponent is the totally chilled out surfer dude, but still impossibly jacked behemoth Crush, meaning that this is, in the words of OSW, the Doink bruh, making kids cry bruh feud. Shout out to the OSW boys as always. I can do a better surfer voice than, oh dude, stay off our beach dude, no locals bruh, catch the wave, hang ten, stop. Basically, Doink's an evil heel clown, he's mean to the kids at ringside during shows, and Crush is not okay with that, and he's like, nah, it's super not okay, dude. And then Doink beats him up with a prosthetic arm. It's actually very savage. Back to the interview with Doink and Mean Gene, and Doink is super confident about getting the win tonight, saying that by the end of the show, Crush might be seeing double. What could that mean? Then he squirts Gene in the face with his, lapel flower thing. Gene sells it like a pro, even though it kind of misses. And now it's time for the match. By the way, even though it's 1993, I think Crush is the most 1980s babyface we've ever seen. Look at that mullet. It is truly impressive and heroic. Doink makes his entrance second and squirts Crush as well with his flower. Is that like his only move? He's like one of these lads, spamming Harden for no damage. But it does annoy Crush, who chases Doink around the ring. Shout out to my Metapod brethren, by the way. Nobody wants, you want to go Caterpie, Metapod, Butterfree, of course. You don't want to go Weedle, Kakuna, Bee. No one likes bees. I don't like bees. I'm scared of bees. Bees is my phobia. Bees is my phobia. That's a great band name. No, it's not. Let's carry on with the wrestling. I'll be honest, I don't even really know how to recap most of this match, because the famous bit that a lot of us know comes right at the end, but for the most part, it's just Crush absolutely dominating Doink the Clown. The majority of it is just Crush battering Doink all around the ring, and Doink putting up very little resistance, not because he doesn't want to, but because he actually can't. Crush is just too big and too angry. So much so that I start to think as I'm watching it, this is a little bit monotonous. I'm not really enjoying it. I get the point. Crush is really dominant and brave and strong, and then Doink hits a pile driver? I'm like, what? And also the announce team don't really react to the pile driver. Heenan goes, by the way, Doink has a split personality, foreshadowing what's going to come at the end of the match. I'm like, maybe everybody should have freaked out over the perfect pile driver we've just seen first. Body slam from Doink. It's like WrestleMania 3. Body slam from Crush. It's like WrestleMania 3. Crush attempts to, well, crush Doink's skull, but Doink makes the ropes and then accidentally on purpose takes out the referee with a flailing elbow. Crush clamps on his hold again, and that's the cue for a second identical Doink to hit the ring and interfere in the match. Say it with me, I'm seeing double 4 Doinks, that's right. Doink helps Doink beat down Crush and they do their famous mirror spot. And, you know, it's not brilliant or anything, but it's kind of charming. And who can blame them for getting a bit silly with it? Because this show, on the whole, is all charm, zero substance anyway. Bit like Adam Blampier's recent WrestleMania ranking video. The second Doink goes and hides under the ring, while the first Doink wakes up the ref, makes the cover, and gets the win over Crush. But then, we get some post-match shenanigans that I didn't remember at all. So what happens is, a second referee runs down and talks to the first ref and says, hey, no, wait, there were 2 Doinks, this is wrong, and then we should really find the second Doink. And it's just 2 lads having a side quest in the middle of WrestleMania. I kind of respect it. So the new ref says, I saw him go into the ring, let's look under the ring. And they look under the ring and the second Doink isn't there. The implication being like, oh my god, how's that? Has Doink evaporated? What? Is magic real? But I don't really get on board with this because look at the view they give us to prove that Doink isn't there. Like, oh wow, well done WWF. Your magic trick worked really well there. Good job. But from quite a charming, silly moment that's well remembered from this show, to quite an infamously bad moment that is now also remembered from this show, as we throw to Todd Pettingill, who's in the crowd. Todd is interviewing a couple of Japanese photographers, I guess to show off like what a global event WrestleMania is, especially with Yokozuna in the main event as well, even though he wasn't really Japanese, but in kayfabe, you know, so that all makes sense. The bad stuff comes now. The problem is that Todd, and this is not the last we'll see of him, but Todd, his interview style is less asking a question, receiving an answer in the traditional boring sense. No, Todd just sort of steamrolls through people entirely. He is the beast incarnate of the interview game. So first of all, he asks them if there were 2 Doinks or if it was just all an illusion, which is a stupid question. We're not children, there were 2 Doinks. Anyway, the joke here is that you'll never guess right. The Japanese guys speak Japanese, but Todd speaks English. So there's just... Oh! Well, it turns out, actually, no, the Japanese guys do speak a bit of English because in a moment of multicultural genius, Todd asks them if they're enjoying their time here in Las Vegas, and then one of them says, Las Vegas #1, Caesar's Palace #1, and then Todd says to the other guy, Yokozuna, and the guy says, Yokozuna #1, and Todd goes, unbelievable. I just, not to get too smarky, but like at this exact time, All Japan was putting on a brand of pro wrestling that would later come to be considered some of the best pro wrestling ever seen in the history of the business. But no, let's just laugh at them because they speak a different language. Time for another match, thankfully, and the theme of this one is new versus old, even though they're only about a decade apart in terms of actual age. But I still think the label is quite appropriate because in this bout we have the quite new on the scene Razor Ramon, only in the promotion for about a year or so at this point, taking on former world champion, the recently returned Bob Backlund. And I think this really is a clash of new versus old as well. Not necessarily maybe in terms of age that much, but definitely in terms of style and direction. Razor Ramon is, Razor Ramon. He's this brash, exciting new prospect, whereas Bob Backlund very much represents the pre-Golden Age, the pre-Hulkamania era, all straight-laced and amateur wrestling and grappling and stuff. And this is made very clear to us at the start of the match, as Backlund wants a sporting handshake, and Razor goes, no, just flicks his toothpick at him, and that, we know what we're looking at here. It's also worth mentioning the crowd at this point, by the way, because despite him being a heel, they seem to be nearly unanimously on Razor's side, chanting his name and everything, and looking back, it just really hammers home how mad it is, and this is not a new point I'm making, lots of people say it of course, but how crazy it is that he was never the top champion in the company. Anyway, the match is a really pretty short one, not the shortest on the show though, and they're kind of speed running a typical wrestling formula. Backlund gets the better of the opening exchanges, but then Razor wears him down and gets all heelish, then Backlund fires up and makes his babyface comeback, and then we're pretty rapidly into the finish, which is a flash inside cradle from Razor, and that's it. Razor Ramon wins. Yeah, in just like 3 minutes or something. And we're motoring through the show at quite a pace now, straight to the back again as Mean Gene is interviewing the heelish tag team champions, Money Incorporated, Ted DiBiase and IRS. They're about to defend their tag team belts against a man they pretty heavily beat down a little while ago, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, a beloved babyface of course, and his best friend... Bum 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 bum, with a conquering. Oh, Oh, Jack. Yes, his tag team partner is the immortal Hulk Hogan, returning from a leave of absence in the midst of the steroid scandal, but now he's back and ready to help his friend Brutus at WrestleMania. But the heels aren't worried about this, because in their mind, they have home field advantage. DiBiase explains that they're all about money, and Las Vegas is the city of gold, baby, and the stakes are always high. Like, the cliches are coming out now. I think basically Ted's argument here is the Pokemon weather advantage argument, except instead of weather, it's money, which I believe means that if this match was taking place in like modern day Dubai, the faces probably shouldn't even bother showing up. DiBiase's a very confident promo. IRS gets on the mic, I must say, a little bit scared. He's a little bit scared, but he gets through it. And IRS has some very interesting information for us. He says that, oh, I heard that Hogan had a little bit of an accident coming out of the gym last night, implying that the heel tag team champions have paid off some guys to beat up Hulk Hogan the night prior. Maybe feels a little bit out of place at the very colourful, kid-friendly WrestleMania IX. You know, it is a classic wrestling trope, but maybe more of a gritty, Southern-style NWA kind of angle. But that's not really what I find the most weird. What I actually find weird is the timing of it. Why have they introduced this pretty key storyline beat so late in the game? Why not make the most of this? Why not milk it in the build to the match? Oh my god, is Hogan going to be okay? He's been ambushed. And I just don't understand why they would do it minutes before the match itself. It doesn't really serve any sort of purpose. Oh my god, look at Hogan's eye. Yeah, as the faces make their entrance, we see that Hogan is sporting a nasty shiner, which explains the whole, we got some guys to beat him up coming out of the gym last night. It explains that. But what really happened to Hogan's eye? Well, nobody really seems to know for certain, or they're keeping very tight-lipped about it. I think Hogan himself claimed that it was a jet ski accident, but I think that the rumours out there suggest that he got into an argument with Macho Man Randy Savage, who just clocked him one. But yeah, nobody seems to know the true story. And yes, I know the Savage one is the far better story. It's the WrestleMania V rematch we never got to see. And then I noticed something as the faces are making their entrance. Savage, of course, is on commentary. And he says, as they're all talking like, oh my god, look at Hogan's eye. Those guys that got paid off to beat him up, how dare they? These awful heel champions, why would they do such a thing? And Savage says, must have been a cheap shot, which, if it's true, is, I have to say, and I'm not condoning violence, but that's hilarious. Now, the heel champions, Money Inc., they try and jump the faces during their entrance while they're posing in the ring, but the faces fight back and easily clear the ring, and Hogan's posing and stuff. And I know I've said in the intro that the golden era is over and everything, but I have to say, he is getting by far the biggest reaction on the show so far. Unless they're all cheering for Brutus, of course. And hey now, there's every chance of that. There's no chance of that. The match begins properly, and the heels try to do some damage to Brutus's face, but his protective face mask allows him to no-sell all of that offense. That's a pretty substantial advantage to have in the match, right? Almost as big an advantage as, like, being Hulk Hogan's best friend. Beefcake no-sells more face damage, and then fires up and hits his opponent with the... You know how when Hogan would no-sell something, and then he'd hit his opponent with the big you? Well, Brutus does, like, a lil version. He goes, like, you. And of course, as you might expect, the faces are dominating the action in this match. But the heels are just like, right, we've had enough, see you later, bye everybody. They just head out. But then, right, Howard Finkel gets on the mic and explains to the crowd that the referee has ruled that if Money Inc. don't return to the ring within the count of 10, they will lose not only the match, but the titles will change hands as well. And I'm like, when has that ever been how things work in pro wrestling? That's not how it works. The ref can't just take matters into his own hands. Is he not answering to a higher power? Not that higher power. Obviously, DiBiase in particular is livid, and quite frankly, so am I. I haven't been this angry since Chaos 2 beat Firestorm in the semi-final of Robot Wars Season 3. Seriously, man. Firestorm was a pretty local team to me. I think they were from County Durham, which is nearby, and I remember really wanting them to do well, and then they came up against the GOAT, Chaos 2, who literally flipped their robot out of the arena. And Firestorm would be my boy. And like every week if Firestorm was on, I hope Firestorm wins the whole thing. Nah. Dreams aren't real, Jack. Get used to it, kid. Anyway, the match resumes and DiBiase distracts the ref while IRS rips the tag rope out of the corner and uses it to strangle Hogan. I think that's a pretty good spot. That's pretty good old school heel stuff. Ted then slaps on the $1 Million Dream and Hogan's fading, and he's fading. So naturally I'm expecting him to like fire up, but he doesn't. And actually Beefcake has to get in and save the day. Beefcake clamps on the sleeper hold while the referee is once again distracted, so by the time he turns round and Beefcake's gotten out of there, he's just confronted with two unconscious guys on the ground. A bit like me if two people try to attack me in Newcastle City Centre. 1, 2, mixy crew. Two lads on the floor on proper solid melee. I once cried at Big Hero 6. Both men slowly recover, and then Hogan makes the hot tag to Brutus, who runs wild for a while until DiBiase sneakily hits him from outside the ring with IRS's gold briefcase. And to make matters worse for our heroes, Beefcake's protective mask is ripped off as well. How on earth will he survive this match without the insane advantages such a garment provides? Brutus is getting beaten down, but he bravely fights back, and Hogan's calling for the hot tag, and Brutus goes, "No, I'll just clamp on another sleeper hold instead." I'm like, that's really silly. Your tag partner, Brutus, is one of the most unbeatable forces in wrestling history. Maybe get him in the match. DiBiase then deliberately causes quite a contrived ref bump, in my opinion. He literally has to sprint to get into position for it. And then Hogan does get the hot tag, but now the referee's down, so I don't quite know why both teams are still kind of abiding by the conventional rules of pro wrestling. And then Hulk Hogan, the biggest babyface of all time, remembers, might as well cheat, the ref's down, and he uses Brutus's indestructible face mask to knock out both of his opponents. It's a big house show style finish apparently, as stereo covers are made, but uh-oh, the referee's still down of course. What are the babyfaces gonna do? Well, oh, I couldn't believe this. So their manager, Jimmy Hart, gets in the ring, right, and he takes off his jacket, turns it inside out like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and there's referee stripes on the other side, and he counts to 3. Oh dear. And then Hogan, Jimmy and Brutus all celebrate like mad. They're like, yes, we've done it, because they're idiots or the rules don't matter or something. But wait a minute, no, to my delight, the rules do still matter, because a second referee runs down. He saw Hogan use the face mask and he disqualifies the new champions, and instead Money Inc. keep the belts. So yeah, on one hand I'm pleased, because as I've said, the rules still do matter. But on the other hand, a dusty finish at WrestleMania, it feels very cheap. Anyway, do our brave heroes take this news well, vowing like good baby faces to train really hard and maybe come back and win those tag team titles another day? No, they don't. They don't do that at all. So yeah, the baby faces then intimidate the referee, and the heel champions have to save the ref from a beatdown, and then they get cleared out of the ring, and then Jimmy Hart launches the ref to the outside. And this now just fully becomes the Hulk Hogan show, because I'm like, what am I watching here? So they celebrate for ages, like for a long time, like real Americans just playing and playing and playing. It's like an Anarchy in the Arena match or like a New Jack match. The song is just looping. Hogan's like, yeah, come on, baby. They find IRS's briefcase and open it, and there's a brick inside, and Hogan's like, go on. They also find money inside of it as well, which obviously Hogan's excited about, and then they hand out the money to the crowd, and I love Brutus Beefcake's method of handing out money to the crowd, because he's not just throwing it happily all around like Andre the Giant did when he beat Big John Studd. No, Brutus is like holding most of it. He's holding like the stack, and he's like taking individual bills off and handing them out. Hopefully, I guess, to keep most of it for himself later on, and fair enough. Uh-oh. Oh God, Todd Pettingill's in the crowd again, and he's found Natalie Cole. This will be an everlasting love. This will be... Whoa. And Natalie's excited to be there, isn't she? The absolute mark. I bet she's never even heard of Jumbo Saruta. No, I have to be honest, she comes across really sweet. It's not like a media train, like, she's just very genuine and happy to be there. She also says, I can't believe it was actually real money, which makes me think, you're not a mark, Natalie Cole. You know the dirty tricks this industry usually gets up to. Very wise indeed. Todd then stops interviewing music superstar Natalie Cole and spends far longer interviewing the CEO of Caesar's Palace, who... Like, I tried to imagine what the CEO of Caesar's Palace would look like before he came on screen, and then he did, and I wasn't that far off. He basically cuts a promo about all the great events that Caesar's Palace has put on. I'm like, boring. Can we have some more weird stuff, please? And right on cue, we cut backstage to a teeny tiny waterfall coming out of the mouth of a lion. This serves as the backdrop for an interview between Mean Gene and a man he says he was gambling with last night, Mr. Perfect. And if we just look at Kurt Hennig's face there, That is definitely true, isn't it? Perfect's opponent at this event is none other than Lex Luger, a man Perfect criticizes in this interview, revealing that Luger attacked the champion Bret Hart at a benefit breakfast earlier today. You can't attack a man, Bret Hart or otherwise, at a benefit breakfast. Breakfast's very important. Breakfast means breakfast. Oh, no. Perfect then, uncharacteristically, because he's usually so perfect, stumbles over his lines in this promo. He tries to say Lex's nickname, the Narcissist, but instead calls him the Lexicist, which sounds kind of awesome. You'd think that Mean Gene, being a pro, would try and skirt over this, but no, Gene's absolutely delighted, isn't he? Anyway, time for Lex's entrance. He comes out with a group of women, which turns the announce team into slobbering dogs, and they all get in the ring, but they do have that quite iconic bit where the women all pick up mirrors with sparklers on the top, and of course Lex is most interested in his own reflection. Mr. Perfect comes out, bit of flirting from one of Lex's girls. What's going on there? Perfect gets in the ring, the match begins, and it's immediately apparent from the opening exchanges that Mr. Perfect, in terms of sheer in-ring mechanical ability, is a cut above anyone else we've seen on this show so far. It's not even really close. I know there's various metrics by which you can judge what makes someone, a good wrestler, but again, just in terms of sheer work rate, Mr. Perfect's great. Let's check in with the Macho Man on commentary, see what he thinks of the show so far. Macho Man out of nowhere, unprompted, says, "Let me tell you something about WrestleMania 9, oh yeah. WrestleMania 9 is the best ever." I'm not sure if I agree. I think 3 is definitely better. I think 1's probably better, yeah. 8's better, even with its messy ending. I reckon 4, 5, 6, and 7 probably also have WrestleMania 9 beat. That really only leaves WrestleMania 2. And I understand why Savage didn't say, this Mania is shaping up to be maybe the worst of all time or second behind WrestleMania 2. Like, I get why he didn't, but it's still a crazy thing to say, Randy. WrestleMania 9's not the best. No one thinks that. Meanwhile, Mr. Perfect tries to work the leg of Lex for a bit, but Lex retakes control of the match with his power advantage, then goes for a very dirty pinfall with both feet on the ropes, but luckily the referee sees it and the match continues. And at this point I realise it's not an awful match or anything, it's pretty good, but it's not as good as maybe one would expect given the ability of both men in the ring, especially Mr. Perfect. There's quite a lot of, those kind of secret calling spots conversations in the corner where once you realise it, you can't really unsee it for the rest of the match. And I think Luger did once come out and say that Perfect turned to him at the start of this match and said, "What are we doing? I can't remember anything that we've planned." And Luger had to try and guide him through it. On the other hand, Mr. Perfect, renowned prankster, it could have been a bit. I do think on the evidence of this match, that story kind of checks out. But anyway, regardless, Luger survives a big missile dropkick, kicking out at 2, and then gets a jackknife pinfall attempt of his own. Perfect gets his feet on the ropes, but this time the referee doesn't see it, and Luger picks up a tainted win. Big forearm smash from Lex after the bell, and he departs all evil and victorious. But Mr. Perfect does not take this lying down, and he gets up all angry, and he pursues Luger to the back. I think the back in this case is just a different bit of the car park in which WrestleMania is occurring. Perfect makes it backstage where he interrupts a conversation Luger is having with Shawn Michaels. I enjoy the fact that Lex is like, right, just got my first big WrestleMania win. Time to catch up with Shawn, see how he's doing. Anyway, Perfect interrupts that and knocks Lex into a cardboard vortex which swallows him up, never to be seen again. Michaels isn't very happy about this and he beats Perfect down with weapons. And oh my god, we do see Lex safely stagger away from the cardboard vortex of doom. How did he escape from its biodegradable clutches? And this is quite a ruthlessly efficient bit of booking here, immediately transitioning Perfect into his next feud with Shawn Michaels, while Lex would be turned face pretty quickly after this event for a big program in the summer, filling the void at the top of the card left by the departure of Hulk Hogan. Yes, Hogan would be off-screen by SummerSlam and out of the company altogether by the end of 1993, focusing instead on his burgeoning TV career with his show Thunder in Paradise. We all love it. Thunder in Paradise, by the way, stars Hogan as one of 2 ex-US Navy SEALs who travel the world in their super boat fighting crime. It lasted 1 season, and Hogan was in WCW almost immediately. But yeah, the important thing is that Hogan would not last much longer in the WWF after this show. Keep that in mind, because what happens at the end of this event is baffling. And if you want to know more about Thunder in Paradise, because obviously, the channel Wrestling Bios has a great watch-along series, which I've linked to in the description below. Back to ringside now, where tensions between Savage and Heenan at the commentary table threaten to boil over, but luckily, before it can boil over, we throw to Gorilla Monsoon, who doesn't really have much to say. Yeah, Gorilla basically just says, yep, next match is Taker versus Giant Gonzalez. It'll be a good one. Gorilla Monsoon, that is a lie and you know it. So yeah, it's time for the infamous Undertaker versus Giant Gonzalez match, commonly remembered as the very worst match of Undertaker's entire undefeated WrestleMania streak. Gonzalez is billed as 8 foot tall and isn't really too far away from it, and he made a very memorable debut in the 93 Royal Rumble match, interfering in the bout, attacking The Undertaker, and setting up this match at WrestleMania. Yes, he's wearing a human bodysuit designed to look like a human body. Look, I don't know. And to be fair, like, he is a monster. He is so much taller than his manager Harvey Whippleman as they make their way to the ring. He could probably beat The Undertaker. Oh, I spoiled it already because I mentioned Taker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania. But how, I ask you? How can Taker possibly defeat a man so large? We're going to find out. Now we get that rarest of beasts, daytime Undertaker, of course, making quite a special entrance on a chariot with a vulture and with green pyro. Think you can tell us what to do? Degeneration! I just shouted degeneration, like it echoed around my room, and I'm worried about who heard that. My upstairs neighbour's a very patient man. He's a nice boy, man. He's so patient. The Vulture, by the way, doesn't know how to work the hard cam, but that's okay because neither does Rick Steiner, if we remember. And Jim Ross doesn't care because he is fascinated by the Vulture's wings. He's like, great wingspan on the Vulture, by God. Can't stop talking about its wings. It's kind of like how he talks about wrestlers who have a very impressive collegiate football or amateur wrestling background. That Vulture's a boomer shooter, by God. We get an opening stare down, and yes, Giant Gonzalez is comfortably bigger than The Undertaker, who I understand is a large man himself. Sometimes storytelling in wrestling is easy. Anyway, they punch each other slowly, and they choke each other slowly, and Taker gets on the middle rope, and they choke each other some more. Taker hits old school, but it doesn't knock the big man down, who throws Taker around slowly and then tries to choke him out with a bit of cheeky tongue action as well. Can you tell I don't know what to say about this match? Like, it is, there's plodding matches and then there's plodding. Gonzalez beats Taker down on the outside now, and Taker looks finished, but then Paul Bearer revives him with the urn. Will it be enough to defeat Giant Gonzalez? Maybe, because when Taker gets back in the ring, he almost gets Giant Gonzalez to take a bump, instead dropping him to one knee. And after not very long at all, that's the cue for the finishing stretch. As Harvey Whippleman jumps on the apron and Taker grabs him, but Harvey manages to throw a little napkin into the ring. And then suddenly, Giant Gonzalez actually moves quite fast at this point. He whips the napkin or the cloth off the canvas, dashes over to Paul Bearer, bam, like headbutts him off the apron, and then smothers Taker's face with the cloth. Now, why is he doing that? Well, the announce team fill in the blanks for us. JR and Heenan do a pretty good job here. They're like, wait, what's that smell? The cloth smells of something. What? That's all in the air. And you can tell that they're going to slowly come to the realization and tell us, the audience, that on the cloth is chloroform. It's a chloroform-soaked rag. That would have worked quite well. It wouldn't have saved the match, but it would have made sense were it not for the efforts of Macho Man Randy Savage, one of the most nimble wrestlers I've ever seen. Love him, one of my favorites of the Golden Generation, and he's just as quick on commentary as well, because they start to go, wait, what's that smell? Savage like, that's chloroform. It's chloroform, lads. Stop beating around the bush. That's chloroform. That's suspicious, that, Randy. Why do you know that so immediately? Undertaker is quickly rendered unconscious. Look at his lovely ginger stubble, and he wins the match via DQ. 3-0, the streak lives on in glorious fashion. It's a big heelish ending to the match as Undertaker's getting stretchered out of there and Gonzalez chokeslams the referee and he's gloating in the ring with Harvey Whippleman. These goths are sad. Yeah, very disappointed goths there. Cheer up, guys. Your boy technically did win. Cheer up, the goths. Interestingly, at this stage, as Giant Gonzalez refuses to leave the ring and he's still gloating, the crowd chant for Hulk Hogan to come out and save the day. He doesn't, but don't worry. I've got a little feeling that we're going to see him again before this show is done. Instead, Taker himself thrillingly re-emerges and finally takes the big man off his feet with a series of clotheslines. Gonzalez spills to the outside. He can't believe it. He is debating with his manager, with Harvey Whippleman. They're both like, how on earth did Undertaker recover so quickly? This man's crazy. He's so strong. And just to disprove their point, in the background we can see Paul Bearer restraining his boy from going after Giant Gonzalez with one hell of a headlock. That is Paul Bearer, real shooter. Anyway, Gonzalez is ushered away by Dad's army, and it's time for the main event. We get a little recap of the challenger Yokozuna hitting a banzai drop on the WWF champion Bret Hart in the build, and now Mean Gene is going to get some thoughts from the most important person, not one of the two men in this match, but the most important person in all of the land, Big Terry. Now, why does Hogan look so smug, I must ask? He was on the undercard and lost a tag title match via a disappointing disqualification. What has he got to be so happy about? It's almost like he knows something we don't. Hogan reveals that he's just been talking with Bret, actually. He's like, I just left the champion's locker room, brother. He's just been to give Bret some very important advice. He says he's warned Bret to watch Yokozuna and his manager, Mr. Fuji, like a hawk, brother, because, you know, they're going to cheat, they're going to bend the rules or whatever. But Bret knows that. Bret knows that Hulk Hogan and all the Hulkamaniacs have got his back. And Bret Hart, he slips this in. And Bret's a Hulkamaniac himself. He's smart. Bret Hart is a Hulkamaniac. You heard it from Hogan first. And at this point, Hogan just drops a slur. I won't repeat it, but he says, and by the way, Bret, I want to issue a challenge right now to either you or that slur, brother. The winner faces me for the belt. And I'm like, yeah, that's a fair bit of booking, I suppose. Yeah, it makes sense. You know, Bret or Yokozuna, depending on who wins, facing Hogan, defending the title against this huge star, either at a future pay-per-view, maybe even on a special edition of the still burgeoning show, Monday Night Raw, still very new in its lifespan. It all makes sense. Down the line, though. Down the line. Anyway, Hogan wraps things up, having successfully stolen the spotlight from those lads in the main event, and also steals the spotlight from Mean Gene, just sticking his massive bicep right in Gene's face as he does his closing spiel. Fantastic scenes. Back to Todd. He's in the crowd again, interviewing a child who he doesn't let speak and makes fun of him for having big ears. I'm not kidding. He then physically shoves another child out of shot so he can interview these two drunk frat bros, who I think are possibly future NXT Tag Team Champions. The two friends get into an argument and one of them gives the other one a worked headbutt and the other one sells it. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Probably, on balance, two of the best workers we've seen tonight. And finally, it's time for the main event. Yokozuna gets a big entrance, of course, with Mr. Fuji and the Japanese flag, and there's a couple of geishas in the ring, one of whom wants to be there, and one who definitely does not. Bret arrives, and I think does a good job pretending to be excited, despite what many of us know is about to happen, and despite the presence of this cursed Bret Hart voodoo doll in the crowd. Jesus! And in, I think, a massive error, Bret actually gives his sunglasses to the kid with the Bret Hart voodoo doll, and I think that's a bad omen for later on. And then he gets back in the ring, and the match gets underway. Bret starts things off hot with a big shotgun drop kick, Prince Devitt style, Bullet Club, Yokozuna tries to dominate with his size and strength, but Bret is too wily and intelligent. He manages to trip Yokozuna with the ropes and rain down punches from above. And Macho Man Randy Savage goes, cover him, make the pinfall. And Heenan says he can't, he's in the ropes. And Savage goes, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yokozuna then hits a move I'm going to call the Immortal Leg Drop, another bad omen perhaps, and now the champion's in trouble. Bret gets a flying bulldog for two, but then Yokozuna kicks out hard, sending Bret flying into the air. And I'm very surprised that on commentary Bobby Heenan resists mentioning that this was the exact move that cost Savage the Royal Rumble against Yokozuna, which actually got him this title shot in the first place. Bret now accidentally yanks the turnbuckle pad off and the challenger tries to slam him into it, but turnabout is fair play, and now Yokozuna is down. Bret now locks in the sharpshooter, but that dastardly Mr. Fuji is on the outside with a handful of salt and throws it into the champion's eyes. The hold is broken, and I believe without another move hit, Yokozuna makes the cover, 1, 2, 3, and Bret Hart is beaten in under 10 minutes. New champion. Yeah, that might seem like quite a sudden and surprising way to end your new top babyface's first ever world title reign, and you'd be right. Let's see what happens next. So I actually timed this right. About 9 to 10 seconds after the referee counts the three, after his hand hits the canvas for the third time and Yokozuna's the new champion, Yokozuna celebrates for about 9-10 seconds at most. And Hogan's like in the ring. There he is. Where did he come from? Hogan cannot believe the injustice that he has just seen. And he's checking on his good friend Bret, of course. Bret's a Hulkamaniac, we know that already. And then Mr. Fuji gets on the mic and makes perhaps the biggest kayfabe tactical error in the history of wrestling. Fuji says that Yokozuna issues a challenge to Hogan right now if Hogan's not too much of a coward, and Yokozuna will even put the title on the line. How does that make any sense? Why would Yokozuna do that? How does that make sense? Yeah, it doesn't. But because Hogan is such a great, selfless guy, he doesn't care about the title. He's more concerned with checking on his little Hulkamaniac Bret Hart. But Bret is like, no, it's fine, I'm fine, Terry, get in there, go on, brother, giving Hogan his blessing. Hogan gets in the ring and is immediately restrained by Yokozuna, and then Fuji goes to do the powder spot again, but uh-oh, whoopsie poopsie. Hogan knocks Mr. Fuji down, clothesline to Yokozuna, hits the ropes, leg drop, 1, 2, 3. So Hogan's the champion once again after a recorded 22-second match, an impromptu main event, and he celebrates. The crowd all go crazy. There's fireworks going off all over Caesar's palace, and the good guy has won, and oh, it's a happy ending to WrestleMania IX. And, importantly, maybe when we thought it was over, Hulkamania lives on. Quite a lot to unpack here. First of all, it is worth mentioning that although this has gone down in history as like an all-time bad WrestleMania ending and all-time bad booking decision, the crowd did pop huge for Hulk Hogan's win. The counter-argument that I would like to put forwards is this. People are stupid sometimes. Like, this was such a blatant and transparent regression, a deliberate regression from Vince McMahon. By this stage, Hulkamania was a diminishing force, but I think maybe even more importantly, Hogan himself didn't want to stay. You know, Bret was a very popular new champion and very, very talented in the ring, and yet he was made, I think, to look like a bit of a loser here. So how did this happen? Well, the general consensus seems to be that Hogan used his considerable backstage clout to convince Vince McMahon to drastically change the finish of WrestleMania very late on. Some people even say like the weekend of the show itself. And Bret himself, in this very autobiography, claims that Hogan told Bret that he would return the favour, I guess that means drop the title to him, down the line. And apparently the pair were supposed to have a match at SummerSlam 93 in which Hogan would lose to Bret, and then Vince told Bret that Hogan didn't want to drop the title to him. Instead, Hogan would drop the belt back to Yokozuna before SummerSlam, a King of the Ring in June 93, in a very screwy finish, like one of the all-time screwy finishes to keep Hogan really strong even in defeat, which I find mad because then Hogan left. Why are we keeping Hogan strong on the way out when he's off to make Thunder in Paradise and then off to sign with WCW, of course? Anyway, mercifully, Bret would win back the WWF Championship at WrestleMania X, and you know, he would never be the victim of such a controversial booking decision ever again. So that was WrestleMania IX, one of the most contentious endings to a pay-per-view ever. Also one of the most visually striking Manias ever, maybe the most, tied with Mania 36 maybe, the empty arena one during lockdown, but WWE's hand was forced then. And also Mania IX is maybe one of the worst. One of the worst, maybe not the very worst, but definitely one of the worst. Maybe I'll look at another candidate for the worst Mania ever on this channel in the future. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack the Jobber. A big shout out once again to everybody at my Patreon as well. And yeah, leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below. Like, share, and subscribe to the video, all that good stuff. And I'll see you very soon. Now subscribe to the channel, not the... Like and share the video. Subscribe to the channel. Yeah, that makes more sense.